Banking beyond customer journeys. We have our esteemed panel on stage with us. Mr. Mahesh Ramamurthy, CIO Yes Bank. Let's welcome him with a round of applause, everyone. Mr. Vaibhav Sharma, Director and Head of Transaction Banking Sales at BNP Paribas India. And Mr. Ramesh Lakshminarayanan, CIO HDFC Bank. And the session will be moderated by Mr. Sabyasachi Goswami, CEO Perfios. Over to you.
Thanks so much. Sorry for a bit delay, I guess, but I think nevertheless. So the topic is quite interesting today, which is taking digital banking beyond customer journeys. Now, there was a period a couple of years back when we saw digitization was the theme for several forward-looking FIs, including the banks. Now, digitization was all about building apps, portals, and customer journeys. Now, the thought process was more focused towards giving a customer a superior customer experience, kind of Amazon kind of experience, what we can imagine. So it was all about building superior customer journeys as seamless and frictionless as possible. Now, most of it is done. So what's next? So let's today discuss with the three gentlemen here with me on the stage, spearheading the technology and the digital initiatives in the banking in India. Mr. Mahesh Ramamurthy, the CIO of Yes Bank. Mr. Vaibhav Sharma, Head of Transaction Banking, BNP Paribas. And Ramesh, the CIO of HDFC Bank. Welcome all of you, and thanks for sparing the time.
Thank you.
So let's start by asking a question, Mahesh, with you. When bank seeks to digitize, where should the big investments be? Is it in the digital solutions that are focused on the customer experience, or wire improvements through the back-end process steps, regulatory policies, and risk assessment, or invest in transforming and modernizing the legacy technology?
I think, Sabya, the way I look at it, it's a very deep question, the way I look at it, because at the end of the day, every bank has their trajectory in terms of how they're shaping up their own businesses across the ecosystem in India. When you do that, they also carry a lot of legacy. They call it, and I would not call it legacy. It's the way they have run in the past, and the technology and the way the customer profiling is changing. The technology enablement is happening. So what's going to happen is, and more importantly, the compliance expectations from the regulators are also evolving rapidly. So to me, I think it cannot be a unidirectional or one-directional approach that needs to take place. I would firmly believe that the bank could, look at what his business strategy is about. If that means that they are going excessive in terms of 2 or 3 areas, understand what's the kind of technology elements that they need to focus, what's the business aspect first, and what's the technology that supports it. How do we create those experiences for sure? They will definitely need to manage on the risk side. Now, you cannot keep risk away from the business, because at the end of the day, the digital age which we are in, the scale at which we operate, risks actually multiply its effect. So obviously risk is imperative for us. And when we do both of these, it's imperative that we also understand what is the kind of internal frictionless journeys that you create. Forget the customer is definitely important, but for you internally, the operations is extremely important, because if you don't create the automation, you will just create more for more. Whereas what you need to do is a less for more. So you have at least stabilize your operation, create more automations, create more checks and balances in the whole process. So to me, the answer is not one, but it could be across all the facets that you talked about, and maps to where the bank is focusing its journey. That's very, very critical. So if a bank is focusing on retail, within retail in specific aspects, it's focusing in cash management in certain areas of merchants and how they cater to the cash management business and the evolving trends. It is important that you understand as to what is the evolving ask from the customer, focus there. Back end look at risks, back end look at operations, and more importantly, the overall gamut about compliance. So it's never a one-side story. It has to be a 360-degree view. And you have to keep balancing what you have in terms of your spend, which has to balance to your growth. So you can't be arbitrarily spending across, but you obviously need to see where's the return coming in and how you balance it across. That's the way I would put it.
Thanks, Mesh. Ramesh, if you can share your thoughts on where should the big investments be?
So I think it's an interesting question because I think the first point that you made is the front-end journey done, and I have my own views on that because I do see that there is a 20%, 15% upper middle, millennium kind of population that's fully digitized today, which is expecting instant gratification, which is expecting digital assets to be available on the go, and they're very savvy to kind of navigate through. But there is 80% of the India that still needs assistance. Every time you get into an ATM, a new guy who's kind of got a new ATM card, you will see him looking at the security, right? You get a new phone in your house, you will always, give it to grandfather. You will always see him looking at the granddaughter, the grandson, right? So the digital journeys are still not done by any means. I think we are living in a very, urban, millennial kind of a thought process. And then when you cut across further, the retail side is probably still far ahead. But if you look at the SME and have to look at the downstream on the corporate side, very, very little work has been done. So I think fundamentally, first of all, there's a lot of digital on the front end itself to be done. And the way we have done about the banks have gone about it, and I include, my bank as well. And we've been clumsy and lousy, so to say. Okay, why am I saying that? Because just putting UI UX flavor on top of a digital journey, it doesn't solve the problem. Because when you start getting scales, the stability, the accuracy, and the completeness of the journey actually is at the back end. It's never at the front end. You will find that you'll have 30 APIs for 30 journeys, and you will find those 30 APIs giving problem later on. So you need a very interesting middle, engineering journey. If I have to look at the entire digital ecosystem. Hello, I don't know. I'm audible. I think my this is gone. Okay.
Very clear.
So I think that's a little bit of a challenge that we continue to kind of see. And I think the middle engineering has to be done very differently as we go along. We need more of orchestrators. We need more of API bundling. We need a lot of ability to do low-code, no-code journey orchestrations. Then, of course, downstream, it's a very different challenge. None of the core banking are even microservices enabled today. So every time there's a new API, you're going and plumbing it, right? Yep. So I think it's a massive journey to my mind. And I think the way I see is that both from a product perspective, moving from, retail to commercial to corporate, and then on the engineering side, going downstream from the front end to really creating a very robust middleware, and then actually kind of transforming the legacy cores to be digitally ready. That's the 360 that I would like to say that I think we're still about 3 to 4 years away, if I have to be very clear about that. So,
Thanks, Ramesh.
I just need
Vaibhav, your views?
Yeah, thank you so much. And Sabya, I think I concur with what both Ramesh and Mahesh has talked about. Each bank might be there in their journey somewhere. But if I were to speak for the industry as a whole, what we have seen in last half a decade or maybe decade is that banks have built digital journeys for customers. Banks have also created transformation teams which usually sit in IT and operations. I think the next big investment for most of the banks should come in connecting these dots, because we have created a lot of silos. And if you digitize the customer journey without re-engineering your operational models, it's almost like putting a cart before the horse, right? So because at the end of the day, the customer experience is fulfilled only when the last leg of the transaction is completed. And we have all, collectively banks have created that maze where we have to now get the dots connected. So that is where I see significant amount of investment coming in. Within particularly in that space, I still feel the machine learning, automation, and AI is going to play a very, very key role. And that's where, in fact, we look up to organizations like that of yours to get those dots connected, increase the return on investment for the bank. Right? And that's where it's going to be very, very critical. And that's where I see more and more money getting pumped in, especially in the banks.
Thank you, Vaibhav. So, Ramesh, if I can ask a question very specific to your bank. You have been busy building the digital factory and revamping the digital and technology stack at the bank. What are some core principles you have had in mind when building them?
So I think it kind of follows what I spoke in the last question, because like I said, when we're kind of doing the entire transformation for the bank, you have to look at all the aspects, right? And I kind of spoke about the middle and the back end. So obviously we've started a lot of work on the front end journey, which was the easier part if you ask me. And like I said, it's very easy to put a UI UX. Today, I mean, in fact I met a Valley company 2 months back, which develops a Flutter app in 4 hours. Okay, that's it. It's that low code, no code on the front end. But when you come to the back end, that's where the middle end, the complications come through, right? So what we are trying to do is really kind of focus on the back end and the middle layer. On the middle layer, we are kind of putting through a very interesting set of orchestrators, like I mentioned, because I do believe that what is the end game? The end game is any fintech partner should be not coming to you at all for an integration. And banks are not there. I mean, if you go and look at, you learn from credit bureaus, you learn from some of the other digital fintechs, globally. They do that work in hours, actually, literally. But for banks to reach that, it's an engineering right across. So what we've done is we've basically started work on the middle layer quite interestingly. We're working with a number of technologies. Some of it is low code, no code standard platforms, like a Power Apps or like a MuleSoft kind of an integrator. ESB, but we've also started working on some of the open source platforms. So we are working very heavily around ZB, Camunda kind of platforms that can come in the middle. Downstream is a different challenge in the legacy, and I've spoken it quite at length across the industry that I believe time has come for you to take bets on core banking. Because if you don't do that, and I'm just saying because HDFC Bank being one of the largest players, they have no choice. I'm sure the other banks will follow suit, but at some point of time, you have to start looking at microservicing the core. Otherwise, this game will not, because you cannot have billions of hits coming on a monolithic database and you hope that it will not crash. It's going to happen one day, right? So there's a lot of focus happening around changing the legacy architecture. So we've been working, for example, on rewriting our mobile apps. I spoke about 2 very interesting stuff last month around following the core, removing the entire payments out of the core and making it a microservices architecture. We are attacking the customer master, which is the other big thing, to kind of see if customer master can be moved out. And when we are moving this out, we are building this as a cloud native microservices and what I call as an active architecture, because banks today cannot be a hot DR or an active passive. They have to be active architecture, even from a 100% digitization journey. So I think that's where some of our factories today, so we have a 3-pronged approach. The digital factories largely are focusing on the front and the middle layer, low code, no code based kind of platforms and building digital assets. The back end is a larger layer. So we have these factories in Bangalore and Mumbai, which are rewriting some of the core components actually. It's a very interesting journey. I think it will take us about a couple of years to get there. But there is no other way to do. There is no easy route out. There is no point in going to another partner and hoping that he will kind of do this. And a lot of stuff we are actually doing on our own. In few cases, we're doing some strategic partnerships. But yeah, it's an ongoing effort. It's not going to be an easy one. But I said it's a long haul, and we have to. And I see the banking industry per se going through this journey at various stages. I think we probably have to do it because of our background and size and what we have gone through. I think others will follow. So it's an interesting journey that we'll find. And that's where the fight between the fintech and the banks will continue. I think there is both competition and coexistence that will happen as we go.
Yeah, rightly said, Ramesh. I think the journey ahead for the fintechs and banks are getting more blur, and that's how it will be pretty much. So Mahesh, if I can get to you. Now, Yes Bank has given a lot of emphasis towards enabling the fintech ecosystem, and be it BIN sponsorship or providing APIs for powering neobanks, etc. Do you see fintechs driving a lot of new use cases in the future and banks mostly powering them from the back end?
See, Sabir, the way I look at it is definitely, as Ramesh has also called out, and we all know that today fintechs operate very innovatively in narrow spaces. Banks probably have the custodian of the money as well as the customer data. So that's the distinguishing is starting to blur a bit, but it will definitely be there because we are regulated entities, and RBI is obviously very concerned about how we are going to be from a risk perspective. Having said that, I think banks, to extend its reach and to extend its service or service offerings, will actively source fintechs or engagement with fintechs in three areas. One is in terms of sourcing, servicing, and using Rails. So it's definitely going to be there. So for us, I think we started the journey. We were one of the early, I would say, banks who really accelerated the overall adoption or integration to fintechs. We were behind a bit. I think now pretty much what Ramesh is saying is what we are actually accelerating our work. So that pretty much all the fintechs over the next 6 to 8 months, there are opportunities for fintechs to productize our entire API channels. One thing that we are now focusing on is to productize, so which means that you kind of come in, create a tick box in terms of what you want to integrate, which means my front-end teams, the sales teams as well as those business teams are able to tick, okay, we want all of these, and there is a pricing associated with it, or there is a BIPS that we really work with, and say, yeah, come on board and get it done. So I think that's the kind of shift we are doing. It also means that there are a lot of work that we need to do internally also, from just enablement as well as risk management perspective, because there is loads of compliance overheads that are coming through the chute now, as well as in terms of a transaction. So which means now today, we have 1 in 3 in terms of acquiring on the NEFT, RTG and the UPI side. We are doing a huge amount of acquiring transactions. It also means that we don't hit the core for every transaction. So we've sort of accelerated our capabilities in terms of putting a payment hub, making sure these don't go inside the core, keep it out, give exposure to fintechs in a way that it satisfies their demand too, and how you do the reconciliation pretty much smoother. So there is fair bit of work we are now doing. We do believe that there are going to be new journeys every fintech. In fact, we probably have a lot of meetings with fintechs, new partners, probably every week. Some interesting use cases coming through partnerships, tie-ups, engagements. And we've also set up an accelerator program within the organization to be able to invest in fintechs who we can actively partner with and bring on board. So I think overall we will coexist. While we'll compete, we will also coexist. It will also be benefit. At the end of the day, there has to be a balance between the two, and I do believe that banks, both the organizations coming together, the fintechs and the banks coming together, will only be good for the customer and for the larger ecosystem under certain guardrails. I always keep mentioning this because you can't be flying around. A few of us have been part of some of the challenges that we've seen in the fintech ecosystem. So we have to be careful. Otherwise, data can get compromised, and that is not good for India as a whole. Forget about banks, India as a whole. Because for whatever we're doing, it can create its own downside. So I think partnerships, coexistence, playing it together will be good for a lot of the customers at the end of the day. That's the way I see it.
Thanks, Mahesh. Very important point you made. I think the regulations will come, and they're not against innovations, but I think there will be speed breakers just to avoid accidents. That's what you are stressing upon. Thanks. Vaibhav, if I can come to you. So Vaibhav, you have been heading cash management and transaction banking platforms for many years now. Now, these are areas that are generally not associated with digital, as the target segment is generally perceived as someone who needs personal touch. What is your view of digital transformation, and how has transaction banking and cash management services looking beyond customer journeys in this digital landscape?
So, Sabya, you already put me in a spot to say that we are not good at digitization, but I think corporate bankers are not good at perception management. Let me start by saying that. If you talk about cash management, I think the digitization wave in cash management started well before the digitization became a buzzword in the retail segment. I mean, we've been integrating with the client's ERP systems, APIs, much before these concepts actually came into the retail world. So I think first thing first, is that really a new concept for the corporate bankers? I think we need to do a bit more work on our perception management. We'd be the flag bearers of that. That's on the cash side. Trade still remains a very regulated product. It still has a lot of unstructured data coming to the bank. It still has a lot of paper coming to the bank. And I think that's the question, or that's the issue that most banks are grappling with. I mean, if I were to talk about BNP Paribas, we also had this situation like any other bank. We honestly looked at it as an opportunity and not as a threat. And we came up with this solution called Document Exchange Connect. The idea was to give a uniform experience to the client, whether they are giving us instruction in a structured data format or they are giving it us in an unstructured data format. For those who are familiar with the banking industry, whether it is, let's say, a bank guarantee, which is very unstructured, or whether it is an open account transaction where you have IDPMS, EDPMS data. How do we give a uniform experience to the client? And the trick is that wherever the information is available in form of data, we consume it as is. Where it is available in form of a paper, you convert the paper into data at the first point of interaction, right? There's so much that you can do about it. To answer your second part of the question in terms of how do we see digital banking solutions going beyond customer journeys, I think there is, in our journey, banks have to start rethinking about the way we define customer journeys. When we talk about customer journeys, and every bank has about 50 odd customer journeys, and this is not what I am saying, this is what BCG in their report says, we focus a lot on our products and customer journeys related to that product. Our clients actually need a lot of product which go way beyond banking. And that's where I see the next phase of evolution for banking. We need to start looking at ourselves as the provider of the ecosystem, where you have fintechs on one side, you have vendors on the other side. You become the aggregator of sorts and allow your clients to connect with the entire ecosystem. That, according to me, is a next step for most banks to evolve. And am I talking something which is very futuristic? No, that future is right here. It's happening. I mean, Mahesh is more qualified to talk about that. Look at what Yes Bank has done with ULIP, with ONDC. These are not banking services anymore. These are not banking customer journeys. We are taking it way beyond what the conventional wisdom would have told us, what customer journey should look like. And that's where I think the future is.
Very interesting point, Vaibhav. Now, since you mentioned that the way we perceive corporate banking in terms of digital is not true, so let me jump on to you again with one more question. So with English being the predominant language of banking in India, some banks are now experimenting with vernacular languages, right? What's your view of introducing vernacular language? Do you think it would apply for the corporate segment as well? Is it worth the effort? Basically, there are challenges in testing, incorrect interpretation, character sets, incorrect translation, transliterations, etc. So, what's your take on that?
It's a very interesting question, and coincidentally, very recently, we actually co-produced a product with one of our fintech partners for a client where they wanted an EIPP solution, invoice, payment and presentment system, to be made available to their constituents in South Indian regional languages. So to answer your question, do we see corporate use cases evolving in vernacular language? Well, we do have some cases. We have live cases already. We have to understand that corporates are made of people. There are individuals behind every transaction. And if it makes for if the vernacular language makes sense for an individual, it would definitely make sense for corporates also. Having said that, I'll be honest in accepting that the number of use cases that you will find in corporate would be far, far lesser than what you will find in retail, where the individuals, we are talking about banking the unbanked, right? We are a small country with a very small population, so that's a humongous task in itself. But Sabya, if I can take liberty of extending your question and taking it to a slightly different context. We are sitting here in the Global FinTech Festival. I represent a European financial powerhouse. We expect to see a lot of Indian fintechs going and kicking much above their weight, establishing themselves in Europe, in other markets, in Latin America, etc., etc. It's not just about Indian vernacular language. I see a huge amount of opportunity for Indian fintechs to connect with banks like BNP Paribas and other banks in other geographies, where they could take their solution, which can be presented to clients in French, in Chinese, in Spanish, so on and so forth. So the opportunity for different language other than English, and not just Indian vernacular language, to my mind is humongous. It's just that you have to be very intelligent, calculative in terms of where do you want to draw that line. And at this point of time, I would think it's broadly the front end, which probably needs the translation, and the back end can still work in English, because ultimately it's all binary, and the two gentlemen here are subject matter experts. Is 1 and 0 at the end of the day, right? So it doesn't matter beyond that point.
Thank you, Vaibhav. Ramesh, too much emphasis was given to digital journeys, especially in the retail segment. And that is how many banks have strategized as well. What, according to you, will happen to the physical, personal touch that many still look for when banking, actually?
I think I spoke about it the previous question also. I think India is still 80% assisted journey. And we must understand, in fact, we have got this very, very different strategy as a bank also, because we continue to open a large number of branches, right? And contrary to a lot of, media and analyst, expectations, why are you doing this? India is digital, everything. It's not that real, because you go to an Indian market, right? And it's also a lot of lesson for the fintechs also, because you go to an Indian market and you try and open a financial account, and you have to sustain. The challenge is not getting that account. It's never the challenge. I mean, I can tell you hundreds of solutions where we've digitized and tried to do acquisition through third party, but the balances don't stay in that account, because that's built on relationships. Financial product is all about relationships. We can get the first money, or we can get the first loan out. But after that, just kind of nurturing, curing, and kind of upgrading the relationship, it's a different task. I mean, you all know that when you would be rather, you can do statements, balances on a daily basis. But when you need a financial advice, you need somebody to talk to. That is the reality, right? So I think the way we see that it's the phygital isn't going anywhere. The digital will assist the physical models. That's the fundamental, difference out here. And you have to be digital in the market and acquire quickly. The conversations will move from acquisition and servicing basics to actually advisory and consulting. And that itself can again become digital. So that doesn't mean the branches would look similar to what they're looking today. And I'll give you a simple example. And why is this such a big solution? Problem. I think a lot of banks today continue to be on MPLS networks. I mean, this technology is 25 years old, boss. Okay, if you go talk to anybody in the fintech world, or in the commercial world, in the new world, they have not heard about MPLS, right? We go and wire every single branch. 2 wires go with 2 different service providers. Then we put 2 different switches. We put 2 routers, and then on top of it, we'll put proxies, and then we will put antivirus. And by the time the branch is set up, it's like 8-10 weeks. Right? And the costs are 3 times more. But, there are today solutions available that you can literally take off the cuff, plug the local ISPs that is closest to you, and that's giving you a wired service, get onto a cloud proxy with a better security, and set it up, right? So fundamentally, I think that the physical aspects and the nature of the physical distribution will change. I think there's a lot of digitization that will happen. That's not digitizing, that's more technology intervention, so to say. And they will, on top of it, the digital journeys will come on top of it. And then the human angle will actually start pushing the relationship values to a different size. So if you ask us, those are the 3 pillars. You first get the technology infrastructure kind of modernized. Then you get your digital journeys tuned to unassisted and assisted both. And then you overlay, relationships on top. And even the relationships, like you said, very interesting example today. Do you really need the CRM today as a login system? Take a simple, I don't know how many of people out here are CRM fans. In today's world, you don't no relationship manager will log in into CRM. I can 100% tell you, it doesn't have time. Okay. There are headless CRMs available. Can I be on his Teams all the time? Can I be on his WhatsApp providing him insights? Right? Data will be a very huge player in the assisted journey. And we are like one of the biggest aspects of the phygital relationship journeys. How do you use the data? Because banks have just largely used enterprise warehouse and reporting. And I'm being, again, not critical. I'm being honest about it. I think the data analytics has to move to the businesses actually. The closer it's to the business, the better it is. I mean, the guy who can tell you the right model is the guy who's sitting in the market, not the guy who's centralized, actually. So I think that's the other play that you have to look at. So basically, it starts with overhauling the technology infrastructure, getting the right digital ecosystem, top of it, getting the right bankers, and then providing them with the right data at that site. And that's how the models will evolve, if you ask me. And then, of course, the 20% will continue to be unassisted, will be happy to do their daily transactions and daily needs as they go along. And this is, both sides will play an important role in the growth of the industry, not just focusing only on digital. I know it's a long answer, but I hope this gave a good insight.
Very insightful. Mahesh, if I can come to you, you have worked globally. What do you think are some of the things Indian banks are doing better than their global peers, both in terms of digital and the technology domain?
I think the fact that I have seen is, having traveled across and run businesses globally, I think the big thing that I'm seeing is across India is the density and the mass of population and the ability for a lot of us to, from a technology perspective, to penetrate down. We've nowhere outside of probably China or somewhere you will find this kind of a population and the density of population. But today, if you see whether it's a banking or the parts of the fintech ecosystem, the ability for us to have penetrated using technology and made use of the technology to start enabling a better lifestyle, better capabilities, different approaches, right? Even from a seed procurement, from an agri-tech company to a medical science or to even weather. You have so much of technology that is penetrated deep into spaces where the vastness of India and the complexities of India, you don't experience it in some of the European nations or in the US. We're 10x to what they do or 4x to that. But I think that's where I do believe that we, from a technology with the government support and with the kind of thrust they've put on, we are far ahead in that journey as compared to possibly anyone else. Now, having done that, you could see some of the stuff that we've done in terms of UPI or whether we've done it even during COVID. I think they're classic examples of how we've used low-cost technology, but really have started to spread it across deep, penetrate deep. Banking ecosystem, as I believe, has ridden this pretty well. We still have a long way to go, I would say, and I completely support and acknowledge what Ramesh has said, because if you see the branches, we are all blessed to be in tier 1, tier 2 cities. I think this is probably over penetrated in my mind. But I think what's important is as you go further down to tier 3, tier 4, where you do require that, I do believe that the physical branch size would probably morph itself into smaller ones, but which uses technology more effectively in a local language that is better understood, and be able to possibly give more financial understanding or create a marketplace which is essentially able to even help an individual. For example, if there is a farmer who really wants to understand how to procure a seed, you could have some partnerships sitting within your branches under certain corners to be able to say, you know what, use my technology, do a individual marketplace to buy seeds, individual marketplace to buy your farm equipment, and we will end up funding you because it's within a closed ecosystem. Obviously, I think we still have some way to go there. Like Ramesh said, the traditional MPLS is probably moving out. It will go into SD-WANs and other technologies that are now emerging. Internet with 4G has helped us a lot. 5G will really completely change the face of the game in terms of how we penetrate using technology much better, and how banking and financial ecosystem is going to be using that to make to give a face using digital. I think that's going to be useful. We talk of all the new technology, but I think that penetration is what India has rightly said. We are now in an acceleration path, and we are much ahead when you compare this to our Western counterparts. That I can say. That's where I would put my 2 cents in this, and I think very proud of what we've done. And we all should be proud, because at the end of the day, it is a combination of the fintechs, it is a combination of the power of our mind on technology and the government's push with the help of regulators and everything to be able to push us down the line. And I'm sure that eventually we'll start making decent profits, because right now we're pushing it, but eventually as it starts to turn, as more and more come into the system, it's going to be good for all. That's the way I see it.
Thanks, Mahesh. I would have gone and asked more questions, but I think the watch tells me that the time is up. But last one question, where if you can briefly answer in one sentence the question for all of you. What do you see the next big quantum leap for banking across the globe and in India? Vaibhav, we can start with you.
Very, very broad question, Sabya, and gets me to thinking mode. For India, for sure, is to bank the unbanked, and that's no mean feat. I mean, that's going to be really a quantum jump because of the challenges across geography, challenges across cultures, languages, and people. Where they sit in the society. So I think for India, the biggest quantum jump would be to bank the unbanked. For bank globally and in general, I think there is enormity of the data which is available today. And hand on heart, no bank today has really cracked that code in terms of how to use that data, how to get the data points to connect to each other and start making financial sense out of that. And I totally agree with Ramesh that the next quantum jump would be to put the data with the people in the business and start monetizing that data. And wherever we'll figure that out, whenever that happens, I think that is where the banking is going to go to the next level.
No?
Try now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think usage of data, to me, everything else will, like Mahesh said, the system is self-evolving, and we are ahead. And we will get there, because frankly, the kind of momentum that we have got there, from a digitization perspective, we will get there. From a technology usage, we'll get there. Where I think and in fact, that's an area that we have to also introspect, because the way we use data in India is a challenge. In fact, the challenge is not in the advanced insights. I think that we can build. The challenge is actually quality of data. I mean, fundamentally, it starts from there. So the data, the entire life cycle, players who can manage and harness that very well are the ones who will kind of be the cutting edge. I'm not talking about 2-3 years. I think 2-3 years is more of a catch-up game on all the technology stuff. But after that, the guys who can really harness data are the ones who are going to kind of make the difference, because everything else becomes ceteris paribus, actually, if you ask me.
Thanks. Mahesh?
Yeah, as my colleagues out here have talked about data and talked about the front end, what's happening, I think I would say the explosion of transactions and the multiplicity of technology usage across. The biggest thing that any financial institutions would really look for is risk management, an active risk management. I would not call it passive. It's more in line to the overall thing. That's going to be very critical, because any bank, as we start to scale with data, how do you apply AI and ML on top of the risk with the vast quantum of data, and also manage the transaction flow is going to be very, very key for us. Otherwise, you will probably, before you blink an eye, you're going to see money flowing around. That's something which I think is very critical as we start to scale. That's the third leg in my mind.
Thank you, Mahesh. Thanks to all my fellow panelists for those insightful session. I think very, very insightful and inspirational, all about India, the technology, what is the future of the digital solution. I think all in the safe hands, I must say. So thank you so much once again, and thanks to all the audience for giving us a patient hearing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. May I request everyone to kindly be seated? We'll begin with the next session immediately, which is a fireside chat coming up. May we request everyone to kindly be seated with your headphones on. Once again, we'd like to thank our speaker, our panelists and moderators, and of course the audience for attending this session. It's an honor to have all of you here at the Global FinTech Fest 2022, the world's largest FinTech Fest. May we request everyone sitting at the back to please come forward. You all can come forward. There are a lot of empty seats towards the front. Everyone sitting at the back, you all are welcome to come forward and be seated.